Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the delay. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:07 p.m. This is the regular meeting of the Planning Commission for January 19th, 2023. And I think we'd like to start with a roll call. I see all members are present. Dina, if you could so note. We like to start each meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd like to join me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let me see. I don't think announcements are. Do we have any announcements? Or should I wait? Okay. We start each meeting with oral communications. This is where anyone wishing to speak on a topic not on tonight's agenda may request to do so by filling out a white speaker slip in the back of the room and handing it to the clerk. Dina, do we have any oral?
We do. We have 2 speakers this evening.
All right, thank you. Now, comments and questions during oral communications cannot be addressed or discussed by the Planning Commission or staff, but may be referred to the appropriate staff. And Dina, let's call our speaker.
All right, our first speaker is Ellen Burr.
And for the record, we have, this was a document prepared by you, right?
It'll be for this.
Got it.
The second
Send an email.
Different one? Sorry. Continue. I'm sorry to interrupt.
But that's not on this. That's, are we good? Okay. I am here on 2 items this evening. One is to address, I don't know if it's a procedural or a policy problem, but I was really aghast at the meeting where the developer came in at the 11th and a half hour and wanted to pull it and was allowed to pull it after some people had spent hours and days of reviewing the document, and then we're told, so sorry, especially you. There ought to be a way so that doesn't happen. How else are you going to get qualified people who are willing to put in all that time and then have it jerked at the last minute, especially on a document of that size and that importance? So I'm hoping that doesn't happen, or that maybe there was some way outside of ex parte mind meld or telepathy that his concerns and questions were delivered to the staff, which I guess it was then okay for them to discuss with the developer, because otherwise I don't know, it seems like we're missing a piece there. Secondly, when it comes to affordable housing, particularly in instances where there have been concessions or bonuses made. Although I've been told there is no economic impact, no fiscal impact for this, there is. If you're not collecting tax money, then you're not collecting tax money. And I think it's incumbent upon whomever is in charge to let the entire population know exactly when you do an affordable housing project, how much the city is giving up, because after all, we are totally almost dependent on our real estate and property taxes. And I think some people have no idea that that's happening. And it would be nice to know, ZBB, whatever you want to call it, exactly how much you're giving up or not collecting, whatever. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our final speaker for oral communications is Dennis Caden. And this gentleman is the one that had the paperwork.
Good evening. Spock to Planning Commission.
Right, your clock hasn't started yet. Whoa.
Toothpaste? Yeah. Is it good? 1, 2. All right. So in our general plan by our founding fathers, we had a circulation element. There's policy 2.4. So if the camera can show that so the people at home can see it, that would be nice. When considering circulation patterns and standards, primary consideration will be given to the preservation of character and safety of the existing residential neighborhoods. Where conflicts arise between convenience of motorists and neighborhood safety, community character preservation, the latter will have first priority. The reason I'm here is to ask you to see if you could make a recommendation for some of these R30 units where they've been given the new parking ordinance that was passed in December of 2021. So you can go to the next slide. Next slide. We'll go to the next one there. So this is a proposed project where the red lines are the neighboring streets where there's no parking allowed. So the intention, when I'm sure City Council said, oh, let's give them a break, they don't need to have as much parking, was because they assume it's going to filter out into the neighborhoods. But here's a neighborhood with a special exception, and therefore the unintended consequences are where those cars are going to go, and they're going to go into neighborhoods that should not be affected at all. Next slide. The Baldwin project is very similar. So right now, the neighbors there will be impacted by any excess traffic that's going on there. Next slide, please. So here is a slide of the old ordinance where the first proposed project I referred to, it's proposed for 149 units, and under the old ordinance, they were required to have 365 parking spaces. But under the new ordinance, they're only allowed 197. So that's a difference of 168 parking spaces. No existing neighborhood should have to suffer the consequences of having to deal with excess parking on their private property or streets. Does that make sense? I understand, we all understand why it was passed, but now we're finding maybe there should be exceptions. So what I'm asking, and in the verbiage I submitted to you, is could we just look at any R30 where a single adjacent street that it borders has no parking and require them to go back to the other parking ordinance? Does that make sense? Do you think it's doable? Because if you said yes, I would ask if it could be retroactive. You know this, okay, well, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. We deal with state laws as well as our own.
But the ordinance said that a city may do that. Didn't say they shall do that.
Can't really have a discussion on this tonight, sir.
Okay, right.
And
But
if possible, I would say this is a good presentation. You should bring it to council, who's
Okay.
our direct bosses.
Right,
I
okay.
mean, seriously,
Will do. Thank you.
you'll be welcome there.
We'll put them to the test.
If you like,
Once
I'd be
again.
happy to talk to you after the meeting about, there are a number of state laws, as you mentioned, that really limit a city's ability to do what you're requesting. But I could talk to you about some of those, and maybe there are some ways around it. So anyway, I'm happy to chat with you after the meeting.
Or tomorrow. Thank you.
It's a night of tech problems. Huh. Who can say? I mean, yours is different from ours. Sorry, we may have discovered the source of the feedback loop. Well, I don't hear it right now, so I'm going to continue. Next up on our agenda is changes to the agenda, and we are going to have changes to our agenda this evening. And I'm actually the cause of that, because I'm going to be recusing myself from item 8A, the housing element site. I have signed a contract with the Cardiff Main Street Association, and we'll be hosting a farmers market at the Miracosta College campus directly next door to this property. And just to avoid any appearance of impropriety, I'm going to recuse this evening. But I'll do that a little more officially when we get up to that item. Because of this, I've discussed this with our secretary, and we'd like to take the items number 9, 10, and 11, which usually come after the regular meeting. That's just future items by PC, Planning Commission reports, and the secretary reports. We're going to move them up before item 8A, and because otherwise I'll be here for however many hours in the back room watching. So I'm going to get home and put my little boy to bed tonight. But moving on to the next item is our consent calendar, item 8A. And consent calendar items are considered non-controversial or routine in nature. They're typically voted on in one motion. There's only one item on our consent calendar tonight, which is the 2023 Planning Commission meeting schedule. And I don't think we need a staff report on this, but I would like to discuss this before we, should I pull this and then discuss it?
Yes.
So I'm going to pull this item. It means there's nothing on the consent calendar. And we'll move on directly to item 6A. And I just wanted to run this by the rest of the commissioners. Here we're setting up a summer recess in July. I think last year we did August. And the question I wanted to ask was, have we coordinated with, I know the council did a similar, are they also going dark in July?
I believe they are.
So we're matching their schedule.
Yeah.
Did anyone else have anything to add on this, or was it just me? I'd entertain a motion to approve this item.
I'd make a motion to approve the consent calendar, or this item, 6A.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Let's see if our screens work. Did it go through?
So the vote passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right. So moved. Moving on to our regular agenda, and this is the item 8A, St. Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church Senior Apartments. Oh, yeah. What am I doing? I'm moving straight onto the agenda. Yes. Shall we, I did just change the agenda. Do we have any future items that we'd like to be added by the Planning Commission? Hearing none. Moving on to any Planning Commission reports. It's been a while since we've seen each other.
I have something.
Chris
Yes,
Ryan.
It's very short. I just before this meeting attended a meeting at the traffic circle at Aeolus. It's the second meeting that the neighborhoods had to try to come up with a new or better design of a small neighborhood traffic circle, and staff was there with some ideas on how the new traffic circle, Joy and Tony were there as well, the mayor and Joy. So they were there as well, and people got to talk about what they might want this traffic circle to look like, or whether or not they wanted to go back to stop signs or no stop signs. So, and there was no consensus among neighbors, and nothing has been decided, but city staff and city council and the neighbors are working together to come up with a solution.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that. If those don't know, it's a tiny little circle, traffic circle, about 10 feet around. at the middle where 3 roads intersect on, in Lucadia, west of the 5. It's a little squirrely, but so is a lot of Encinitas. But I think we'll work that out.
Yes.
Thank you, Chris. I guess we're moving on to
Wait.
Secretary. Oh, both of you.
Couple, I guess, back in the fall, we approved Scripps Institute to place some sensitive monitors on the bluff at Beacons. And given the more recent events of storms and stone steps, if we could get an update in the future on, just a status report of those. There was some concerns from some of the neighbors and things like that, but
That
maybe if we
would
can
be
get an
hugely
update,
valuable.
that'd be great.
Good catch there. Thank you, Bob. Anyone else? Susan? Steve? Well, moving on then, Secretary reports from Anna Kalamusi.
Yes, thank you. Just 2 items. The first one is that some of the terms for planning commissioners are up, and today was the deadline for the incumbents to reapply. That was at 5 p.m. today. And then for all other applicants, the deadline is Thursday, January 26th at 5 p.m. And let's see here, any questions on that item?
Yeah, so who's re-upped? Anyone?
As of March 1st, 2023, we have Bob Prendergast and Chris Ryan and Susan Sherrod.
Excellent. That's what I was hoping for. Thank you.
Okay, and for the next item, the City Council will be hearing the Native Plant Ordinance Subcommittee recommendations next week on their agenda, and the staff report is released online.
Cool. Well, I'm interested to see that. I know we all contributed. Who's presenting that? Is that staff? Is that a staff project at this point?
Yes, it is a member of staff, yes. I don't know which one, but
I'll look forward to that.
okay.
Great. Thank you.
Chairman, I've got a quick question. It might be out of order. As we requested the update on this bluff, can anybody provide an update on the Maria Coastal Commission application for the development there?
I'm happy to do that. The Maria Village Housing Element Site application is still on appeal at Coastal Commission, and no new news on that.
Thank you.
And I would say that was probably the exact proper time to brought that up. Are we done with item 11? I believe we are. Moving on now, welcome to the regular agenda, and thank you all for being so patient. This is item 8A, the St. Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church Senior Apartments, case number multi-4672-2021. And this is a public hearing to consider a density bonus, design review permit, major use permit modification, and a coastal development permit for the construction of a multifamily residential development consisting of 61 residential apartments and 12 of them low income. The property is located at 3459 Manchester Ave. This parcel is zoned rural residential and is located within the residential R30 overlay zone, as well as the scenic visual corridor, cultural natural resources, and the coastal appeal overlay zone. And at this point, I ask, are there any disclosures? And I'm going to jump right in first because, yes, I have a source of income interest with, I've signed with the Cardiff Main Street Association, as I mentioned, and I'll be running the farmer's market in the property abutting yours. And we'll be good neighbors, trust me. I know what I'm doing in these. But I am going to recuse from this case, and I am going to pack up my stuff and leave, and I will be passing the gavel to our Vice Chair, Steve Dalton. Steve, this one's for you. And give me a few minutes to get myself out of here. Did I miss anything? I will be watching the rest of this on TV.
Okay, any other disclosures?
I did a drive-by. I drive by every morning on my way to work. I couldn't get in because the gates were locked, but I did stop and create a traffic hazard and took a look.
Thank you. Okay, we will start this item with a staff presentation. Patty Anders.
Good evening, members of the commission and fellows in the audience. My name is Patty Anders, I'm planning manager, and I will be presenting the Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church Senior Apartments Project. The project site is located at 3459 Manchester Avenue and consists of one legal parcel, which is on the same parcel as the existing church and preschool. The R30 project site is surrounded by a senior living facility to the north, the church, preschool, and 30 existing senior apartments to the south, vacant church-owned land to the east, and the Miracosta College San Alejo campus, and undeveloped land to the west, as shown in this slide. The site was historically vacant with the exception of agricultural uses for a 2-year period from 1980 to 1982. The project is a housing element site allocated to address the regional housing needs assessment for the city of Encinitas. It was referred to as Site 01, Greek Church, and the housing element identified the intent of the owner was to develop 2 acres and construct 60 senior residential units. The 2021 to 2029 6-cycle housing element was certified by the State Department of Housing and Community Development on July 13th, 2021. The parcel is located within the Residential 30 Special Study, Cultural, Natural Resources, and Coastal Appeal overlays, and is zoned Rural Residential 1 with the R30 overlay. The proposed applications include design review permit, coastal development permit, and a major use permit modification. The project is a density bonus by right project with no subdivision proposed and will provide 20% affordable units and therefore qualifies as exempt from CEQA based on Government Code Section 655832H and I. The project was reviewed under the Municipal Code R30 Development Standards, Objective Design Guidelines, and the Encinitas Municipal Code and General Plan. The project was also reviewed against State Density Bonus Law and Government Code Section 65913.4, which states that local jurisdictions' discretion on housing projects is limited to adopted objective design standards. The project proposes 61 senior apartments within 2 buildings. Building A is a smaller structure to the south, and Building B is a larger structure to the north, as shown on this plan. The project also proposes associated grading and landscaping improvements and the demolition and relocation of some existing surface parking spaces, relocation of existing ground-mounted solar PV arrays, and prefabricated storage structures. The project provides outdoor common amenity space, which consists of 3 outdoor courtyards, including lounge areas with a fire pit and fireplace, outdoor dining areas, outdoor gathering spaces, a bocce ball court, a wellness walk, raised vegetable boxes, and multi-purpose lawn area. Private open space is also provided, which includes outdoor patios and balconies. The applicant is requesting a density bonus application, and as I mentioned earlier, the project is proposing 61 senior apartments, which consist of 49 market rate and 12 low-income units. The project is providing 20% affordable and therefore is eligible for a 35% density bonus, which would allow a maximum of 81 units to be built on the site. The project meets the 15% inclusionary housing requirement and provides a total of 9 inclusionary units that will be held as affordable in perpetuity, and 3 units will be held as income restricted for 55 years, all at the low-income category. The affordable units are comparable to the market rate units and range in size from 1 to 2 bedrooms. The 12 affordable units are dispersed throughout both buildings and are located on all floors as demonstrated in this slide. Density bonus law has no limitation on the number of waivers, and the applicant is requesting 1 waiver due to the physical preclusion of dwelling units without waivers as identified in the density bonus report. The waiver is being requested from state density bonus law to modify the parking standards and is proposing a ratio of 0.5 spaces for all units versus the required 1 space for 1-bedroom units and 1.5 spaces for two-bedroom units. The project proposes to provide a total of 31 parking spaces. A more detailed parking discussion will be discussed in later slides. Due to the project providing 20% affordable units, the project is also eligible for two concessions. One concession is being requested to allow some existing overhead utilities to not be undergrounded, but relocated along the northern property line running east-west, as shown in the civil plans and on the next slide. The justification for the waiver and incentive is contained in the density bonus report. The overhead utility running east-west is circled in red on this slide, is proposed to be relocated to the northern property line, and it's shown in pink in this slide. The exhibit is also provided in the density bonus report, and the utility improvements are shown on the civil plans in greater detail. All utilities along Manchester Avenue will be placed underground. The project complies with the R30 development standards, including those listed here, with the exception of the waiver for the reduced parking and a concession to allow some of the existing overhead utilities to not be undergrounded, as I discussed in the prior slide. Under density bonus parking laws, the project is required to provide 72 spaces, but is requesting the waiver to allow the 0.5 spaces for each unit for the total of 31 spaces. The project is complying with the major use permit parking requirement of 197 spaces and is providing 200 spaces. The project is also in compliance with the EV charging requirements, and a condition of approval is placed on the project to comply with the California Green Building Code standards. A parking management plan was conducted and identified the parking is adequate for the uses on site as detailed on this slide. And if the commission would like, we can return to this slide and discuss it further. The project will generate 198 ADTs and is consistent with the General Plan Policy 1.3, as the project will result in an LOS of C or better at both intersections and roadways. The project also proposes to extend the raised median along Manchester Avenue and construct a southbound right turn deceleration lane at the project driveway. The project is consistent with the circulation element and Policy 1.3 and the housing element environmental assessment. The project is providing 67 trees with a variety of shrubs, plants, ground cover, and vines on the site and is in compliance with all landscape standards. The project exceeds the parking lot landscape requirement of 15% and is providing 20%. And 30% of the site will be landscaped. The 3 outdoor courtyards are shown here in red. The required common amenity space of 200 square feet per unit is 12,200, and the project is providing 15,521 square feet, or approximately 250 square feet per unit. The project is also providing streetscape improvements, including the curb and gutter, sidewalk, and landscape parkway consistent with the city's road standards. The project was strategically designed to complement the existing clean, simple Greek architecture of the church and existing senior apartments. The top 3 photos shown here are of the existing church structures and the senior apartments to show that the proposed architecture will be compatible. The 2 bottom images are a portion of Building A east facade with an architectural element, and the photo on the right is a zoomed-in view of this elevation. The top 2 images are a portion of Building B looking northwest and southeast. The bottom 2 photos are of the interior of the existing senior apartments. The top images demonstrate the break in the building mass with open staircases and pedestrian bridges connecting the building, as well as varying roof lines, building planes, and accent elements to add visual interest. The proposed major use permit modification is to amend the existing use permit, as the proposed project is on the same parcel as the church, which originally required a major use permit. The amendment documents any changes and determines conformance to the parking standards of the use permit, including adding a portion of the adjacent parcel. The project complies with the original major use permit parking requirements of 197 spaces, and as I mentioned, is providing 200 spaces. The project requests were found to be in compliance with the Encinitas Municipal Code and General Plan. Therefore, the project was found to be in compliance with the local coastal program. A citizen participation program was conducted via Zoom on August 11th of 2022 with 6 members of the public in attendance, and some of the key issues raised are listed here and identified in the CPP. Staff did receive 1 email on the project this AM and was forwarded to the commission this afternoon. The project is by right, and the technical studies listed here were provided and addressed the requirements of the Housing Element Environmental Assessment. These reports can also be found in the attachments of the staff report. Staff from each discipline is available to answer any questions, as well as the applicant's consultants. As I mentioned, the application is by right, and as defined per Government Code Section 655832H and I, the project provides 20% low-income affordable units. It does not require subdivision, and therefore the city may only require design review approval, and the project is statutorily exempt from CEQA. In closing, the staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution approving the planning applications and adopt the CEQA findings as a by right exempt project. And this concludes staff's presentation, and staff is available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none? Oh, go ahead. Yep.
I'm not sure it's a staff question or a conversation, but it's addressing the email we received about the bus. And I did a little, I don't think there's a bus line that goes along Manchester in that area. Is that correct?
Yes, that is our understanding as well.
Bob, did you have something?
I think these are going to be probably after the presentation. I think I learned my lesson last time.
Okay.
Well, is the presenter going to make? The presenter will present.
The applicant will
and I
make their
think the applicant,
presentation,
and
yes.
I think I'll have some questions to the applicant at
Okay.
that time. Thank you.
Fair enough. Okay, if I would invite the applicant up to, if they would like to speak. The applicant will have 10 minutes and a chance to rebut any public comments made afterwards.
Okay. Hello. Good evening, commissioners, staff, and members of the community. My name is John Worster. I'm the development manager and representative for Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church, who is the project applicant here tonight. Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church has been an integral and active member of this community for over 30 years. From the beginning, and actually at this location, more naturally affordable apartments have been an important part of the church's ministry. 30 existing apartments that are on site already are a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms for seniors, and although they are not formally deed restricted, the church has voluntarily kept rents well below market rate, serving low income and Section 8 residents with rents typically at 60% to 80% AMI rent levels. That's area median income. The project before you tonight is an extension of that ministry and service to the community in the form of 61 additional 1 and 2 bedroom apartments for seniors. So we come here tonight, not as a typical developer, but as an active member of this community to present and request your support and approval, of course, of this senior project. You will see that great attention has been given to create a beautiful and integrated design that meets or exceeds city design standards, and one that also fits within the development budget, which as a nonprofit organization, I might remind you, is not unlimited, of course. In attendance tonight, and to answer any questions, we have members of the parish leadership, as well as key members of the development design team, including Omega Engineering, the civil engineer, and the project architect, Maxine Ward of Studio E Architects, to whom I now turn it over for a brief introduction to the project and its intent. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Also with me tonight is John Sheehan from Studio E Architects, and together we make a good team. We can tag team any questions you have. Maybe we can go forward with the slides. I have a few, just to give you some history of how we ended up with the design that Patty so ably presented to you. So the site was, it's very rare to get such a vacant site. We were obviously inspired by the church architecture, like Patty said, the adjacent grove of trees. There's a gentle slope from the north to the south, the views of the bluffs. So obviously taking advantage of the natural site was important to us. Go to the next slide. So we came up with 5 big ideas, and this is something that this slide, I think, was presented to the church in the very first meeting that we had with them. So the idea was to make a campus, make a connection to the church and the existing apartments, so the circulation around the site would be very important for a pedestrian point of view. Push the cars to the perimeter, let the pedestrians rule the site, keep the cars close to the residential and convenient, but not a visual impact on the site. Block the view of the neighboring project, not that there's anything wrong with it, but try to capture the views to the bluffs and the campus as a whole. As I said, emphasize the views to the grove and the bluffs, and invite the sun in and create sort of open spaces that had different aspects onto these different areas of the site, and we're able to capture the beautiful environment that we have here. So this was from very early on, the inspiration of the Greek hill towns. We want this, not a Motel 6, right? So next, I don't think I need to say more. To John's point about a nonprofit developer, how can we most effectively, efficiently design the building? And obviously double-loaded corridors is efficient, but we wanted to tweak that, right? So we divided them up. We broke the mass. We shifted them on the site. We rotated portions, so some portions of the building are single-loaded with exterior circulation, again, to take advantage of our climate. Next. And then we kind of sited them on the site to kind of create these courtyards and gardens that were kind of surrounded in nooks at the buildings that the residents could really interact with. Next. And we looked at the overall site in conjunction with our landscape architect, and to create these different zones for people to dine, play, connect with the church activities, connect with the existing housing. Next. And so the site plan that Patty presented, you can see that the perimeter road and parking along the north, the 3 different courtyards, the large multi-purpose field, the farm area at the very south. Next. And so the architectural character and inspiration, we were interested in a modern sort of take on some of the Greek elements. So very sort of straightforward forms, some arches. Obviously the white against the blue sky is very appropriate here in Southern California. Sort of if we could step down and break up the massing of the building, we were interested in that, and how could we play off of the landscape as well, because that becomes a huge part in your perception of the architecture. Next. And so yes, it is primarily white. We feel like the emphasis is for natural materials, and that will come in the foreground in terms of some of the landscape materials. We've got gabion walls. We have some natural stone walls at primary entries. We also have wood soffits at the underside of the balconies. We have open stairways where we would propose using a colored ceramic tile and the risers there. So really kind of picking up some color and natural texture in those areas. And this is just a little bit of an updated rendering. The landscaping on this is not up to date, I will say, but it gives you this idea also of the sunlight and the playing on the white plaster walls with the trellises and the guardrails and that playful shadows that are cast by the awnings to shade the windows and also provide this kind of depth. You'll see that the building articulation, we've pushed and pulled the balconies and the patios to create those deep recesses. Next. I think I just put this in to talk about the landscape. Next. And the different versions of the courtyard. So we have the sunrise courtyard, which is also associated with the entry from the parking area. That's where the mailboxes would be located. So the trellis on the bottom right, sort of a pergola entry, denoting your kind of home. The Sunset Grove is to the west. It has the fireplace. It has the overhead festoon lighting. It has the bocce ball court. The farm is where we have the raised planters, and that's kind of the area that kind of connects the new and the old. So maybe both residents from the existing apartments can also, use the planting boxes there. And the terrace is the central courtyard, and that's where everything kind of comes together. It's more about gathering. The barbecues are located there. And the landscape character for each of those spaces. The terrace. You can see the gabion walls and some of the natural sort of stone elements, the very, very bright colors of the bougainvillea, and some of the rock rose and some of the other plants that would really create that sort of a foreground to the buildings. And the Sunset Grove having some yellows and different different tones there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions of the applicant? Okay, seeing,
Well, I'll wait for public comment.
okay. Do we have public speakers?
We do. We have 3 this evening. First up is Sheila Cameron.
Good evening, commissioners and members of the Greek Church. I have a long history with the Greek Church. I was mayor when the church was dedicated, and it was my privilege to do a proclamation. Good evening, Sheila Cameron. I live in Leucadia. I have 4 areas of concern that I have questions on, and I would like them answered. Ecological. Because this project is so near to the lagoon, there are hundreds of species of birds that could possibly be on this property. I personally, walking the site, have seen egrets, herons, and of course hummingbirds were plentiful. There also, I saw paw prints of a bobcat, and I'm wondering if the wildlife is going to be protected during this construction process. Secondly, trees. In reading over the attachments, I found mention of both cutting down a single pine tree and saving the same pine tree, which is, it's located due south of the current solar panels. And I'm wondering why all the beautiful big pine trees were cut along the edges of this project. The stumps look perfectly healthy. I've been involved with trees for a long time. The city of Encinitas has a tree policy which requires developers to save all large trees on a development project because they eat up the greenhouse gases. We're talking about climate change here. So why were these full-grown pine trees removed? The proposed housing project. This is classified as a senior housing for 55 plus. So please clarify for me why it stipulates that only one 55 plus person needs to be living in each apartment, which means a family with children can live in this senior project. I'd like you to address this. Project heights. Unless, it might have been a really tiny print and I missed it, but going through everything, I never saw the heights of the second story, or the 2-story, or the 3-story. I also saw a comment about a 40-foot screen, and I'd like to know what that is exactly. What are the proposed amenities on the rooftops that would require a screen to go up 40 feet? I'd like to know. Traffic studies and traffic flow. I'm requesting that the developer do a current timely traffic study on Manchester Avenue, particularly at peak times. Traffic study was done in 2021 and augmented in March 2022 by adding 1.5%. Is this considered an acceptable study? I don't think so, and neither should you, commissioners. Where did they come up with LOS studies showing C, B, and A levels? Are you kidding me, on Manchester, particularly at peak times? Those are easily E and F. The circulation element in the Encinitas general plan requires, as Dennis said earlier, safe, convenient, and efficient transportation system. But the ingress and egress proposed by this developer requires drivers exiting and entering this project to turn north to make a U-turn to drive south, and they have to turn south and make a U-turn to be able to drive north. And I'd like, why is this considered safe, convenient, and efficient? And I'd like you to respond to my questions, which I have handed in to you. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Larry Pell.
Hi, I'm Larry Pell. I live in the existing senior complex on the same property in Cardiff. And I want to see a quality and safe project here. And I have some concerns. And bear with me as I read some stuff. The traffic being the biggest one, I think. The plan, as stated in the trip distribution and assignment document, is saying that it distributes all trips to the new driveway, all entering and going out. I disagree. People will avoid the U-turns that Sheila just made reference to, and they'll use the original driveway to save either going, I'm going to read this because it gets involved. It's a little convoluted, so hang in there. Entering traffic from the south has to go north to make a U-turn at El Camino Real and Manchester Boulevard, and then turn around and come back and come into the complex. Exiting traffic going to the north would have to go south first, make a U-turn at Miracosta College, and turn around and come back. People aren't going to want to do that if they can get around it. And the most obvious thing to get around it is to go to the existing entry, exit that we've got. In fact, this is going to be like 50% of the trips, if you look at it, are going to be doing these U-turn kinds of things. That's like half of the 368 trips per the Sandag formula for what's going to be happening every day. Okay, the original drive, that's hazardous. You have to, the left turn is downright scary coming out of that. You've got to get into the median. You've got traffic going 40, 50 miles an hour both directions around you. Then you've got to watch your rear view mirrors while you're looking north for who's coming up in which lanes and try and get in there. I sweat it every time I do it. Entering from the south can be a little tricky. It's not as bad. You have to get in the median, wait for traffic to clear that's going north, and then come into the entrance. And of course, it's the fast traffic. The study says that there's 3 entrances, exits. Those are the 2 I mentioned. The third one is always gated, and it's a no left turn exit, which is on the other side of the church building from the main one that I'm talking about. One thing I would like answered, how do the drives within the project connect internally? It's unclear from the map, and it says that you have all 3 that you can use, but I'd like to know how they connect. The suggestion I have is put a traffic signal at the center drive. People can get relatively quickly to that, and it would make it safe. There's probably minor modifications, if any, needed in Manchester. Moving along, let's see, have I got it covered? Yeah. I'm concerned about the underground utilities or lack of same on the north edge of the project. In the budget, as shows in the density bonus, they're showing $467,000 for the undergrounding altogether. If they underground everything. If they only underground along Manchester Avenue, in front of the church and along sort of the treat area there, which is, none of it is adjacent to the new complex, it's still gonna cost $340,000. Another $127,000 would be like 27% of the total, and it would allow them to underground for the project that this is undergrounding for. And it would be safer, more reliable, no crossed wires like we've had recently with a power outage, aesthetically better, and no EMFs, which is becoming an increasing concern with people. They might look back 20 years later and go, why didn't they underground that? Okay. The emergency fire exits, per the architectural plans, they show it as going through this middle of, how can I say it? I'll read it. It shows it as going through a grass street between the two projects, which necessitates 3 turns for emergency vehicles. They come in, they take a right, they take a left through that, and then a right coming in the back side of the new development. If they did a perimeter drive all the way around, it'd be 1 turn. So I suggest that for the emergency access. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our final speaker is Stephen Baylor.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here more to speak about the need for this type of project. Little background, I helped start the largest marketing research company for housing in the Western United States. And we used to see 3,000 subdivisions across Southern California and Southern Nevada. And I've watched the erosion of the housing market to the point which we are seeing it hurt the economy of California and restrict the ability for especially younger people, not old people like me, but younger people to actually afford. I can remember when this area was considered an affordable part of San Diego County housing. We used to have 225 subdivisions being sold in the San Diego County. Now we're down to lower than 50. So there's a need for an alternative to what we see out there. The general for sale and rental market has been driven up to a point that because of the restrictions in housing development, to the point that we're seeing a loss of our population, and it's going to have a dramatic economic effect. Projects like this particular one speak directly to that need, the need of giving affordable housing so people can actually stay in this area. If I can't find something, I'm probably going to move to Wyoming. Yeah, it's not a pleasant place in the winter to be, but you just have to do some things. The overall design is excellent. To that gentleman's request for the stoplight, I think that you should certainly consider the cost of a stoplight. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with how much that costs, but it's pretty expensive. So I would just ask that you consider the fact that people of my age group today are actually going out and trying to find housing. And I recently did a little research up in the San Marcos area, and you have people in their 60s and 70s, empty nesters buying housing. Luckily, they can afford it because they have older housing that they get money from, because they can get a single level house. But it's a 3,500 square foot house for an empty nester, but they have no more alternatives. The idea is of Peacock Hills up in Oceanside, Hermosa Housing, and some of these other things, they're just not, you can't build them anymore. And so we're in a drought situation for affordable housing. And to have an economically viable housing market, you have to have entry-level apartments, mid-level apartments, and then luxury apartments, entry-level condos, middle type condos, and then high-end condos, and then the same with single family. You've got to figure out some way to have an entry-level type. If not, our children will not be living here, and this economy will suffer. We already lost I was on the committee that basically was put together by the Building Industry Association to try and bring the computer center that is now in Austin to San Diego. The one thing that got it to Austin was their affordable housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, if the applicant would like any time to rebut any of this, you have 5 minutes. If not, we'll move on to deliberation.
Thank you. There are a lot of reasons to rebut. A lot of careful thought has gone into the design, obviously, over the past 18 months to 2 years. We've heard these concerns. We consider everything, including undergrounding of utilities and traffic circulation. We hire consultants who not only know the law, know the city ordinances, but are also experts at planning. So not every situation is ideal in every case. I mean, when you develop property, there you lose some things. But we need housing. Obviously, there's a housing crisis. There's not a way to add 61 apartments without any impacts. And a lot of what the comments that were considered, I appreciate, but one point of that is that the state does have some very supportive housing law that helps to make providing housing like this, which is at lower rents, feasible. Otherwise, no one would do it, so they incentivize. So some of these are cost incentives that does in fact allow us to keep those rents at these low levels. So the undergrounding of utilities across the back side of the property, that's a significant cost, and it may not even sound like a lot, but that is a significant cost that actually enables us or the applicant to be able to provide units at a lower rent. Otherwise, it's a negative venture, and you can't afford to provide those units. So, but I'm happy to answer further questions specifically, but that's just kind of in general. But those things were considered. But thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions of the applicant or the public comments that were made?
Yes, I have a few questions. So I'm going to start with the white color. I know that it's my understanding from my briefing with Anna that this project came, or the application for the project came to be when the objective design standards were not what they are today. So this project was reviewed under the old objective design standards. And so the mostly white or all white color of the buildings does comply with the objective design standards that apply to this particular project. But having said that, it is a lot of white. And in the photographs that were shown that were the inspiration for the project, I did see other colors that were involved, in particular a blue, which was a blue on a dome and blue on doors. And while we can't require you to do anything, I do think maybe adding in an element that is consistent with the inspiration for the project and the Greek architecture of a blue might be a nice way to break up some of the visual of the white. So that's my concern about the white color. Another question I have for the applicant. So I know it's one of the buildings is 3 stories. I had a question about the buildings because when you look at it, it looks like it's 3 buildings. But when I look at the plans, it's 2. Is it because the staircase connects 2 buildings that it's considered 1 building? And is there some particular reason why you consider it 1 building versus 2? Is there some benefit to that?
Yes, well, the stage we're at, we haven't done a full egress analysis and allowable area analysis, but our experience tells us that defining it for building code as one building allows us to share some of the egress components. So, that's why we bridge between the two seemingly separate buildings, right? So they can share the elevator, they can share a pair of stairs and so forth. If there was no bridge there, then they would have to have completely different or completely separate circulation systems. So in our mind, it really does function as a single building in terms of its circulation systems and by code, but it has that appearance, which we were going for, of being broken.
Okay, so it's a cost savings as well because you can share the ingress and egress between?
Yes, if there was no bridge there, then it would definitely have a cost impact, yes.
Okay, and you did say that there were elevators, because I'm not an architect. So where are the elevators located?
The elevator is located for that building B at the bridge element between the two buildings. So it's kind of central to both of those wings of the building. And then building A at the south has a separate elevator. It's on the northern side of that building.
Okay, thank you. And I probably asked the question of staff at the incorrect time. So one of the email that we got from a citizen was regarding the applicant putting in a bus stop along Manchester, and I did a quick Google search of the bus routes that service the area, and I did not find a bus route that goes along that portion of Manchester, so that even Miracosta College is not served by a bus route, is my understanding. Which seems like really a bus route should service Miracosta College, but it doesn't. And so another question was, what is the field?
The field is another term that we've been using for the multi-purpose area. That's the large green open space.
Okay, so is that an area that's just an open space that's not designed for any particular recreational use?
Well, I think it's to be determined. The church has various uses that they could accommodate there, such as their Greek festival, the daycare facility could use some of that open space. So again, it was kind of about creating this campus feel and having a space where some of the different uses could also use it, in addition to the residents.
Okay, and then the portion of the property that's owned by the church that's to, I guess it's the south. Manchester confuses me with my directions. I'm going to be honest with you.
To the east, I think, the vacant part.
Yes, the big vacant part. So what is the current plan for that? Is it going to be maintained as it currently is with the groves of trees? And I know it's maintained in some way. It's not left dormant. Is that correct?
Yes, I can't speak to their maintenance program, but the intent is that, yes, it's currently vacant, and those trees that are mature pine trees would remain.
Okay, thank you. I know that for the project to be completed, that the solar panels that currently service the existing buildings need to be relocated. Where are those going to be relocated?
Yes, so along the northern edge of the parking, along the northern property line, we're going to install carports over those parking structures, where Patty's pointing, and the solar panels that are currently on site would be relocated on top of those carport structures.
Okay. Just a minute, I have a couple more notes. So I do have a question about the driveways, because when I was looking at photographs today, I did see that the one driveway is gated. Is that driveway, is the intent for that driveway to continue to be gated? I'm just concerned about how it's going to affect traffic. If people are using that particular driveway to enter the apartments, how it's going to affect traffic on Manchester.
Okay, so maybe just to address the existing and the proposed driveways. So as part of this project, we're adding a new driveway to the north, which is shown at the top of this slide. Unfortunately, this slide kind of blanks out some of the other, I don't know if we have another site plan, Patty, but along the property there's a middle driveway, which I think is the one you're referring to that is typically gated. And that one is the one that is primarily fire access. Like as part of our back and forth with the fire department, it was very important to them that that remain. I think the primary access for residents and users of the church, like the gentleman was saying earlier, is currently the south one, right? And to confirm the circulation, the driveway does connect. So you could enter at the south and you can come past the church and all the parking lot is available. You can continue around the perimeter loop at the western property line. It continues all the way to the north, connects to the north driveway and parking, and comes out again onto Manchester. So it's a big loop. And then the fire department also wanted us to make sure there was access through the middle of the site. So from that gate that you were mentioning, they have a straight shot through. So just to the south of the new project, between us and the existing apartments, is our Grasscrete fire lane. So it's going to be designed to look and feel a bit more of a landscaped pedestrian space rather than a continuation of the asphalt parking lot, but it will be a fire lane for fire access.
Okay, so the gated central driveway remains gated at all times. It's more of a
I believe
emergency?
operationally that is how it currently operates, yes.
Okay, so residents or people that use the church don't have access to unlock that gate in order to use it? It's strictly emergency?
Correct.
Okay. And a question about Manchester Avenue. There were some questions regarding ingress and egress on Manchester Avenue. And I don't recall as I sit here if there's any kind of, besides a center turn lane, are there islands or anything else that block egress and ingress into either of the north or south driveways? Do you have a
Into
diagram?
the north or south?
Yes.
It's the north driveway. There is an island there. You really can't see it in what we're looking at right here. But it's going to be extended down, so somebody exiting out of that northern driveway won't be able to make a left or northbound turn. They'll need to do like the gentleman said, go south and then make a U-turn to get back north, if they use that driveway.
Google Maps,
Google Maps can help,
current aerial, please.
or the civil plans. Yeah, you can pull up the improvement sheet of the civil plans.
Could I piggyback onto that question and just ask, is that at the request of the city engineer, or is that at your request?
I believe that did come from the city. I think it did. Yes.
Okay.
And since we're on this subject, are there any restrictions left or right or north or south out of the southern entrance?
Out of the existing southern and central entrances, we can call them, I don't believe there are any restrictions. I think the gentleman mentioned a restricted right turn,
Correct.
no left turn on the central. The emergency access, you cannot go northbound. And that's a sign in the street? Double line. Okay. So Patty, if you go to the striping plan, right there, and then you can zoom in on the southern portion right there. I'm sorry, the northern portion. You've got it right there. So you can see the central median is extended, what looks to be up to the left side of the new driveway. It's about 150 feet, I'm gonna say there. And that was also because of a potential conflict with the neighboring driveway, which you can see to the right. If you can zoom in a little tighter, Patty, there's some red lines where we're removing striping. So somebody coming out of the existing apartments to the north of us right there could be making a right turn, and then somebody coming out of our driveway could be making a left turn, and that's a conflict there. So now both driveways will be restricted to a right turn, and you get rid of the conflict.
Chris, do you want us to come back?
Oh, no, you guys, someone else can go, and then if I have more questions,
Okay.
come back to me. Thank you.
Okay. Susan, did you have a question? Did you have a question, Susan?
I have a completely different question.
I'll sit down.
Yeah, what I was concerned about kind of ties together two things. One thing was the speaker who mentioned her concerns about wildlife, but I also had a question about that because when I looked at the landscape plan, I noticed that you're removing, I think it's 11 trees, that most of them were crepe myrtle. Crepe myrtle is a type of tree that attracts a lot of birds and supports birds. And so I just wondered where those were. I couldn't find them on the landscape plan where they're being removed. And I do think that you are replacing them with a lot more trees. So I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt, and I'm asking for clarification.
Okay, I can help. Yeah, there it is. So there's an existing parking lot that's kind of central. The new kind of multi-purpose field area goes in that location. But I believe those trees are the ones you're talking about. And those are small, and they're being removed. And as part of the new project, we are actually using crepe myrtle in the sunrise courtyard that's on the north of the project. And Patty, if you go to the colored site plan, I can show where those are. It's
So
those
you'll
it's those
be
purple. The
adding
purple.
crepe myrtles as well?
Yes, the purple are the crepe myrtles.
Thank you.
Bob, any questions?
For until Chris is ready to keep going. Okay. All right, so let's see. The first speaker mentioned might as well just respond to her, building heights and a 40-foot screen. Can you share with me or share with us where she referenced the screen?
I believe it's the mechanical screen.
That's correct. Oh, excuse me. The structures comply with the building height, and the code allows a 5-foot additional height to screen rooftop mechanical equipment, and that's the additional height in this case.
Okay. So it's not a 40-foot screen on top of the screen? No, it's 35-foot height limit with screening of the mechanical. Okay. I just want to make sure that she had that answer. Asking staff a question regarding the traffic study. When was the traffic study completed?
I will have to pull up the exact date, but the project was submitted in 2011. Let me verify the date.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, 2011.
So the speaker mentioned the traffic study was completed in 2020.
I believe the speaker said 2021 was the original, and then
Okay.
they updated in 22.
All right, so there's no, it was updated in 2022. So you have post-COVID numbers in your traffic count? Thank you. And I think Mr. Pell asked regarding ingress and egress into the site, and it appears, Mr. Pell, that the circulation connects the existing facility with the new facility. So it looks like it's a loop or goes along the back to ingress and egress out of the site. So I hope that answers your question there. It's a connected location. Is that correct, applicant? Yes. It's a fire lane thing. No, not the fire lane in the middle. We're talking about if I pull into the north, I go around the outside, and I can come out and go out of the south exit, correct? Oh, all right. I was thinking the fire lane was down the middle. Okay. And we talked about the potential restriction on the south entrance. There is not one, but there is a restriction, left or right turn out of the south entrance? There is not. So question for staff, why is there a restriction on the north entrance but not on the south entrance, creating, I'll just go around the block and make a left. So it seems kind of inane, or if you can explain to me why.
We have our traffic engineer that's called in on the intercom, so I would defer to him for that.
Okay.
And I'm going to utilize our great IT support to help me connect that. Do you want to do your magic? Yeah, he's on the phone, right?
And if this is an adjustment to the major use permit, could we put the same restriction on the south exit? No left or right. I mean, they're asking for a major use change. This is where I'll probably defer to council. I don't know all the rules, but the project is going for a major use change. Can we put additional restrictions on the existing use because it's not a separate parcel, it's all one parcel? So if they're based on the rules of the application, can we make additional changes to the current major use permit that would restrict things like left or right turn out of the south entrance?
So, and because this is a use by right project, we are severely limited in our ability to impose conditions. What we have to approve the project unless we can make certain findings. Number one is there some objective design standard that they violated? So if there is some requirement, then we can certainly point to that. Additionally, there are some instances where if we're aware of a specific adverse impact and due to public health and safety, and imposing and changing the requirements relating to, if we were to impose a condition relating to that, and that condition would not render the project infeasible, too expensive, along those lines. So essentially, we can, there are some instances where if we have a condition that is relating to a public health safety concern, and it will not cause too much of an impact. I realize that's not the technical definition, but that's essentially what it comes down to.
Well, to the applicant, the question I have then is, or to the engineer, if we're making a restriction on the left and right-hand turn on the north entrance, and you're changing the terms of the permit of the property next door based on that drawing that we saw, you know, if I'm the owner of the buildings next door and all of a sudden you're restricting my ingress and egress that you issued a permit to me on, I'm going to be a little grumpy. So please, that would be very helpful.
And
okay.
To then clear yourself to make a left-hand turn. There is no median you can pull into on the other two exits. So therefore, no left-hand turn.
All right, thank you. And then the other question as it relates to the applicant, are you taking the slow turn lane as you come southbound on Manchester, or using the city road to slow down and decel, or are you using your property to slow down and decel? Public road. So the public is giving you the benefit of the decel lane into your private property. You would know.
I think it's worth pulling it up just to look at it all together, and I can explain it.
Sure.
I drive the road every day at all times of the day, so I know it very well.
Sounds good.
What was we saw something with the median with the dotted line before. What diagram was that?
That was the striping plan, and I just wanted to verify that the traffic study account was April of 2021.
Okay.
And then,
So that
and
was
then updated.
15 months ago?
Maybe Google Maps would be better.
Where was it? Right here.
Google Maps.
Okay, zoom in.
There is a property immediately next to us, Belmont Housing. So it would basically be an extension of that lane, which is already used for Belmont Housing, to continue into ours. So the public road that we're talking about is already being utilized by them, and we're just extending it to go into the new driveway that's proposed.
And can you zoom in a little bit more, please? I'm trying to get to visualize the median.
Out of that emergency exit, that middle exit that we currently have, it's not possible to make a left because
there's a difference between not possible because there's a piece of concrete there versus a double line. And I want to be clear here that you can
Well,
make a left, and there's nothing obstructing you from doing so. I'm getting confused over the word median.
the way that the lines, because there is a median there as you're coming from the south, as you're going north, once you pass the first entry, it starts to taper and it goes together, and then it hits a solid piece of median, a concrete.
Okay.
So you
That'd
can
be helpful, yeah.
zoom closer to see exactly.
I'll just pull it up on my.
It's also almost nearly impossible because the road kind of turns and there's a blind spot there.
Cannot be completed as dialed.
I wouldn't even
Please
dare to do
consult
it
your
myself.
directory and call again.
I understand.
Or ask your operator for assistance. This is a recording.
You can also use Street View here. I was looking at that today.
They're trying to get the engineer on. So are we changing the, okay. There you're restricted, so that's approximately where that car is pulling out, other side of that white fence. You could snake around, is what you're saying? You could, but it's a risky play. Got it. All right. And there is not a median at the south entrance.
Your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please consult your direct.
All right, get that. So I guess question for staff is, when you pulled up the civil plans, are we changing are we impacting at all the Belmont site next door?
I'm sorry, we're trying to get the traffic engineer on the phone.
Okay. Maybe we should move on.
Yeah, let's move on.
While
Okay,
they're
sorry
doing
about
that,
I have an answer for you, but
Oh, please.
we can move it to deliberation too.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were in deliberation.
No, let's ask any clarifications that
Okay.
you need, and then we can deliberate.
All right, clarifications. All right, I'll change gears. I just want to ask the applicant, and maybe I'll take direction from the chairman. When this height was originally selected for the housing element, it was 60 units. Is that correct? When granted as part of the initial City of Encinitas housing element, this was 60 units. Your application today is for 61 units, is that right? So 1 unit is giving you the density bonus that you're asking, correct?
No,
Correct.
Okay. So when you initially raised your hand and asked to be part of the housing element to go from R1, was that the existing zoning? And now it's R30, right? Was your initial application at the time, I guess application is the wrong word, was your initial proposal for 60 affordable units? To get the R30 to be in the housing element, was it 60 affordable units?
No, I think it was to get 60 units total, not necessarily 60 deed-restricted affordable units.
I didn't say deeds restricted, just 60 affordable. You're just saying 60 units.
Yes.
Okay. That was not my understanding.
Oh, okay.
In the comments, did the property owners to the north submit a comment? Belmont?
No.
No. And the school to the south? No. School district? No. Okay, so the affordable component is not correct. All right, I'll have to go back and check on that. On your landscaping, you're suggesting to Commissioner Sarad's, is this been approved by the, does this meet the landscaping codes?
Yes, it exceeds the parking lot requirement by 5%, and it is providing an overall landscape requirement of 30%.
And what about the plants themselves? Have they been to code?
Yes, they meet the native requirement and exceed the drought tolerant requirement.
And that's 73% native?
It's 50% native. Actually, let me clarify, the project isn't even required to do that. It was submitted prior to the objective design standards being adopted, so they're not required to do that, but they are complying with the 50% native requirement.
I think they're doing, okay. So they're not required to.
Correct.
Okay. Given the location on Manchester with the ecological preserve across the street, are there any additional, outside of a by right component, requirements that they have as a project to be so close to the reserve in terms of runoff?
I would defer to engineering in terms of runoff.
Good evening, Commissioners. Could you please repeat that question so I clearly understand?
So excluding their by right submission, given the location of the facility and the impact of the ecological, potential impact of 61 units across the street from the preserve, are there any requirements that are unique to the site?
No, they're
Because of
not.
the location to the preserve?
No, they're not. They're actually complying with the requirements for stormwater. And in addition to that, they're actually implementing, I'm sorry, the term I'm looking for, I have Omega, the dispersion amongst other areas that are like grass field and so on and so forth. So they've actually gone above what the requirement is for stormwater. So with that in mind, we don't expect any type of impact whatsoever.
Okay, thank you. As part of this permitting process, there was mention of the field that's in front, that's along Manchester. Is there anything to stop the applicant in the future come back and submit new plans for the field?
No.
No? So that could go away?
Maybe if it's part of the major use permit, is the vacant lot separate from the major use permit?
That's correct. It's a separate lot, and they would need to come before the Planning Commission with a use permit modification if they were to propose anything that warrants that.
So that the field is a separate lot, a separate parcel?
Two different things, yeah. There's the field and then there's the vacant.
Yeah.
So I guess we need to bring-
When I referred to the field, I was the multi-purpose field that is
Excuse
part
me.
of the project.
I'm sorry.
The
I'm
vacant
referring to the-
lot has got the trees.
Yeah, I'm referring to the large vacant parcel along Manchester that's cut out, and that is a separate parcel?
It's a
Yes.
separate parcel.
Separate parcel, got it. Does staff know when they applied for the original units in the back, was there a submission and anything referencing the northern portion of the site, like, hey, this is all that we're going to do, back when they originally designed the project? When they applied for the application to build the units in the existing 33 units?
I'm going to refer to Anna. I think she was actually the case planner on that.
The 30 units that are existing on the site are prior to city incorporation. So they were built before the city incorporated.
So it doesn't matter. Got it.
Chris, do you have follow-up? And Bob, we'll come back to you if you have more.
All done, yeah. No, keep going. All yours.
Okay, I had a question about the affordable units and the placement of them. They appear to generally speaking, be directly above each other. Is that true? Is there any particular, I found that curious, and I was just wondering if there's any particular reason why they are directly above each other or below each other?
I mean, the simple answer is cost. So the affordable units.
That's all the same way.
There's a cost saving by stacking like units over like units. So in some cases, those units have a larger bathroom to accommodate a person in a wheelchair. And so it makes sense to just stack like over like. So it's just an efficiency and cost savings technique.
Is there anything particular about the affordable units that make them less desirable so that they would cost less? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, if you were blindfolded and taken into an affordable unit and then taken into a market rate unit, there'd be no difference. Finishes are the same, spaces are the same, cabinetry is the same, everything's the same. There's no difference. It's imperceptible. It's just in the deed or the rent restriction, but there's no difference in the quality.
Okay, so the difference in some of the units might be that, like you said, they do have their wheelchair access bathrooms versus other ones.
Right, but all units that are on an accessible path are by the state building codes required to be adaptable. So there's a high level, and given the fact this is a senior project, there's a high level of accessibility throughout the project.
Okay, thank you. Another question about the parking reduction. And I read through the documents indicating that your current parking lots are maybe underutilized, except for a couple of times of year during holidays. And I just wanted to speak to that about a little bit. None of the speakers talked about it, but I just wanted to speak about it because it's one of the things that we're considering. So do you find, just kind of, I guess, anecdotally more than being on the property, that because this is a senior living facility or apartments that are for seniors, there are not as many people who have cars or more than one car? Okay, and that contributes to the fact that the parking lots are underutilized? And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that there isn't any restricted parking, so a church member can park anywhere in the parking lots, and anybody who lives in the residences can park anywhere in the parking lots? Is that true? Or are there certain spots that are reserved for just church parking or just residents?
We just have let our parishioners know that the spots closest to the apartments are for apartment use, but it's not officially restricted. So primarily the people who are in the apartments park right next to the apartments, and our church parishioners, they park around the church area, and they're, far enough away. So.
Okay. And is that basically just for convenience for the residents, so their car could be parked close to their apartment?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it? Susan, did you have any follow-up questions? Or Bob, we can loop back to you. Okay, great, thank you very much. With that, I will close the public comment portion of this hearing and open it up to commission deliberation. Would anybody like to start?
I'll go. First of all, I really looked it over thoroughly, and I do appreciate some things. 75% native on your landscape plan is what I saw. I know that it's conditioned to be 50%, but I think going 75% was definitely above and beyond, and I appreciate it. I think the parking of 0.5 spaces is appropriate. It's an excellent idea, and sharing with the church parking lot, very clever and a great way to cut costs to make more affordable units. The affordability in general impresses me. I think that the existing units being affordable, naturally affordable, as far as how it was put in the information that we received, is maybe not something that is conditioned. However, with the history of the active involvement in the community, I think that we can see the intent. And I think that the history bears it out. I think that the vegetable garden farm concept is a lovely addition to the project. The retaining of the mature Torrey pines, very important. I know that you're removing some of the trees. I think it's a total of 13 trees, but you are planting more than you're taking out and more than is required. I see that there were a lot of questions and concerns about circulation, but it looks to me like it works. There was a lot to like about the design, matching, and blending with the existing buildings and church. There's a lot to like about retaining and just relocating the solar panels. I would love to see more of that kind of thing, maybe on the roof or green roof, but I understand this is an affordable project. You're trying to make gains for the sake of the community. So the market rate would be higher probably than all of the units. And I also think the size around, what is the average, about 700 some square feet, 729 I think it was, is a very respectable, affordable unit size. Makes it easier for the construction to be affordable. So in certain ways, you're exceeding all of our criteria. In terms of the number of affordable units, it's about 20%, I believe, is what you're providing. I love the Grasscrete fire lane because it's permeable paving. I would love to see you go more permeable paving, but I understand your bioswales are picking up the runoff and filtering it, and so that is a very good thing. There's just a lot to like. Streetscape improvements, that helps our community. Gee, I have so many notes about things I like, but basically, I like this project. I like that you're adding the affordable units. And certainly there are always more things that we would love to see in terms of, more solar or, maybe different colors. However, I feel as an architect that the character and the colors are blending with existing and that it's a good project.
Thank you, Susan. Any other comments? Sure. I will echo a lot of what Susan has said. I think it's a very nice project, very well planned. I'm impressed with the amount of landscaping that's going to go into it. I share your, all white is kind of all white, but, I would refer or give discretion to the architect to make the choice that they think is appropriate for the site there. It is a by right project. I would say I would remind all of us or let people in the audience know that there's very little discretion that we have for a by right project. This has been an incredible amount of discussion already. And I really like that they've gone above and beyond really what they were required to do. So I like the project.
I'd like to just, comment just lastly. The intent of the R1 to R30 really is part of the housing element, was really to do affordable housing and to really have us meet our state housing obligations. Your history of building 30 affordable units didn't require a density bonus. And it's clear that adding one unit to come to the density bonus is a little kind of like hide the peanut to me. I get we're getting 12, but when we have hundreds of affordable housing units to build, to come and say, oh, we're doing one extra unit to go from 60 to 61 to get the density bonus, to get waived all these different things that I can't do anything about, kind of bums me out.
Bob, I think that's mistaken.
Is it?
Yeah.
Please.
with density bonus, they would be allowed to build 81 units.
Right.
The density bonus is granted to them when they set aside the 12 affordable units.
I understood.
Okay.
Yes, I
So-
know they can do more, but we're getting 12. And I guess the intent of going from R1 to R30 to give them the density under the housing element was to really generate affordable housing. And I'm not seeing getting one to get to the density bonus, to get the waivers, to get 12 units. I think the intent was to do more. And coming to us after doing 30 without any density bonus, 100% affordable, and then to come and do an 80-20 deal by doing one and getting the density bonuses just seems a little like we can
There's
do
a
more.
base density out there that's something like, I don't know, 40 units, something like that.
25.
25 is the base density.
Right.
That's if you took the R30 and apply that to the site. That's what they could build. So adding the 12 units is what they had to add. They set aside the 12 units, and that gave them the bump to get it up to 61. But it's not that they only added one unit.
The
Since
base
city
density
only-
is, help me out, Anna, the base density is what?
The base density is 30 dwelling units per acre. In order to comply, in order to implement the R30 zone, you have to meet 25 dwelling units per acre.
So 25 is the minimum.
Yeah, so over, 25 per acre. What was the base number of units? Is there base
60,
density?
so the underlying zone is 30 dwelling units per acre. So you have to do a minimum of 25 to implement our 30 standards.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So effectively, what they've done is they've bought incentives with their, they've set aside all of the affordable that they were required to do to get to 80.
Right.
And they couldn't get to 80 or didn't get to 80. And so they are using, they're really only doing is using that for incentives. They got the waiver and one incentive in exchange, where most developers would come in here and say, I want all those incentives, but I also want the extra 30 market rate or extra 20 market rate units.
Understood, but we went from R1 to R30, and we're getting 12. And I'm saying,
Yeah.
probably could have gotten more. And
Well,
the city
it
needs- and
seems
the
tough
city
to
needs
take
more.
a mission-driven organization who have already voluntarily provided the 30 that you so like,
I'd like to interject.
Please.
Almost every one of those 15 sites promised us 100% affordable units.
Exactly.
And it's, I'm not mistaken, probably this one included. I do not know why they don't, but I do know that it's posited by the developers that financially, to make end project work, they can't have a certain number of affordable. What I do think, when we as a group, and I think to city council who are listening, I think we need to visit this in two ways. I think that if they promised us when their site was upzoned that they would give 100% affordable units, they should figure out how to do it and meet their budget. As an architect, I have to meet budgets, and I do it. And I have another comment on this for city council.
Okay. But I think we are also getting detract from a client
And for the
who has submitted a project
public
under
record.
every right that they have to do right now. And we may have a broader issue with whether those sites should have been put in or whether they should be 100%. But today in front of us is a project that has met every municipal code requirement and they've done everything legally by right for that project.
Okay, so to continue, I feel what you're saying, and I understand what you're saying. And the other thing that I want to say about these affordable units, when we explore this down the road, and it's on our work plan, I believe that we should not have 100% rentals. I think that there should be a division between for sale and for rent units, and I think it's very important for equity building and generational wealth.
Let's leave that to our work plan when we're discussing those projects. But today in front of us is a project from a client who's been a great community member, right? They've been here a long time. They've hosted great Greek festivals, and they have voluntarily or have, out of their own sense of mission, provided 30 apartments, whether they were required to or not. They've rented them at reasonable rates. I have every indication or every reason to think that they would take a similar approach to the new ones that they're building, that they're not building them like a typical developer that wants to maximize their profit. They're doing it out of a sense of mission to the community. So I don't want to sit here penalizing them by holding them to some other broader issue that we have with rentals versus for sale, or whether the R30 overlay zone was appropriate or not. I feel like they've done everything. They've done it actually a little above what they were required to do. And
It's something we need to revisit.
we can on our work plan. Chris?
I'll just make a couple comments. I actually appreciate that they're not putting 81 units on this site. I think that the size of this project is appropriate for the site, and so I support the size that was chosen. I think it fits with this site and with the lay of the land and the other buildings that are on the site. And I also appreciate that the affordable units are spread throughout the property, because I believe this is like one of the other projects that, the same thing with the color white and the design and the objective standards, that they could have put them all in one building. Is that correct? Similar to another project that was brought before us, based on the timing?
Under our municipal code, yes.
Right. Okay, so I appreciate that route was not taken, and that you brought us a project that has the units put throughout the buildings. So I appreciate that too. And I do like white. But from just looking at it, I know we can't ask you to put in other color, but I was just throwing it out there because I do like the blues and some of the other natural colors of the rocks that were shown to us, and some of the rock walls that had the tans and the beiges and the grays. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks. Bob, do you have a follow-up?
Just lastly, that you would strongly consider the additional cost to underground the northern power lines. I think from you're being a good neighbor to Belmont, you're already undergrounding on Manchester, that you consider that as part of your contribution to the neighborhood. I know it's a cost, everything's a cost, but you are, gone from R1 to R30 here.
I'm sensing some sort of consensus. Can we get a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the density bonus, the design review permit, the major use permit modification, and the coastal development permit for the project.
I'd second that.
Second.
I think Bob beat you to it.
Susan seconded.
Susan, I think, seconded that.
I thought they both did. Okay. I'll capture Susan here. Okay, you can go ahead and vote.
I don't have a cursor when I'm on this screen.
And I don't have the voting boxes.
We can do it by hand. I can force it on here.
Okay.
Okay. So, Commissioner Dalton?
Yes.
Okay. And then Commissioner Ryan?
Yes.
Okay. So the vote passes 4-1 with Chair Doyle recusing himself.
Okay. Thank you very much. With that, I will close the meeting. All other business is done, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
What is the date of the next meeting, Anna?
February 2nd?
Thank you.
Sure, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Susan?
Chris, thank you, Susan. Thank you very much.
Thank you for exceeding all those requirements. Thank you for exceeding. Okay, thank you. You know, that's gonna be the whole thing,
If you give your card, I think, to Dina at the end, she can put it on our.
Yeah, what's your name?
Father Angelo. Father John.